Number 1.
Weird midnight brownies experience. It's 4:45 a.m. right now as I'm writing this. About a half hour ago, I went into the kitchen to make some brownies, as you do. I'm getting out the ingredients, doing my best to keep quiet. My house is in the suburbs, one of those cookie-cutter Stepford wives towns that cropped up around the 60s and 70s. The sun isn't to rise for about another hour. The whole neighborhood is asleep. The floors are stone, and the space is a bit excessive. Sound echoes as a result, and I hate to be noisy. The kitchen has a large window above the sink looking into the backyard. With thin white curtains you can see straight through from the outside when the light is on. Our dog Tanner usually hangs around the back door at night to rest. He's a light sleeper, so sure enough, turning on the faucet perks him up. He starts whining while looking out the back door, so I figure he needs to go whiz. Instead, he sits by the back door and keeps whining, staring into the darkness. Barely audible over the faint whines, I hear this quiet noise, almost like breathing, but it's not mine. I look into the darkness, trying to make anything out. Squinting my eyes, because I'm not wearing my contacts, and everything is a blur. Calling out in my head, "Hello? Is there anyone out there?" As if whatever could be out there could read my mind. There's nothing, but Tanner's just sitting there, looking into the blackness, whining. I'm feeling weirded out now, so I head back inside and whisper to my dog, softly but sternly, "Get inside, now." He's reluctant, but he obeys. I walk back over to the counter and scoop up as many ingredients as I can to quickly put it back where I found it, and return to my bedroom to sleep the anxiety off. But before I get that far, I turn off the kitchen light. That's when I see two small, dull glinting eyes looking into the front yard. Am I dreaming? Maybe it's just my overreactive imagination. I don't know what to think. This is just so what the fuck that I needed to write it out. I don't believe in ghosts. I believe aliens could have the technology to visit Earth, but chose not to talk to us or kill us or something. My yard is fenced in, too tall for a coyote to jump. If it was a cat or a squirrel on the fence, Tanner would have barked or attacked. He's kind of a dick. The ground is flat, yet those eyes were above my eye level, and I'm 5'4". Either I'm seeing things, or someone was in my yard. Maybe they were wearing glasses, and the light from another house was reflecting off of them. Maybe it's just a teenager playing a prank. Wishful thinking? Whatever the case may be, I beg of you, let's not fucking meet.
Number 2.
Creepy Possible Murderer at Therapy by Cake SP 2014. This just happened to me a few days ago. I go to a therapy group because I have had drug problems in my past, so I attend group sessions every week. I went Friday like I do every week. We had a good lesson that day, and I sit with my two friends that I had met there. Rob and Tiffany will be their names for this story. Well, after group, Tiffany says her goodbyes, and Rob asked if he could get a ride home for me. I said yes, and we proceed outside towards my car. A man stood behind my car talking to another lady from our program. He is probably 6 feet tall, in his mid-40s, with very dark eyes, brown and gray hair, and terrible rotten yellow teeth. Rob and I insert ourselves into their conversation, and he trailed off talking to the other lady. I stood talking to the creepy guy. His eyes lit up as he told me about his stepdaughters, how he raised them and considers them as his daughters, but him and their mother had split. He then tells me how he had been in prison for attempted murder and had just been released not too long ago. My stomach started to turn as he told me this. Then he tells me that he didn't care to go back for his daughters, that he was waiting for his ex to confirm that someone had been messing with his 13-year-old stepdaughter, that he was going to go and murder this man if he had been bothering her. I felt very creeped out by this man and just got evil vibes from him. He continued on about saying that he was going to tie this guy up and torture him slowly, thus leading to his death. I walked back over to Rob and asked if he was ready to go, giving him a scary look with my eyes. He replied yes. I then turned to tell the man we were leaving. He then said he wanted to leave too, and he didn't know what was taking his taxi so long to get there. Rob then said that if it wasn't for me, he would have to catch the bus. The man then started begging me for a ride. I told him I couldn't, because we didn't have very far to go, and that I couldn't go out of my way. Which I lie, because I live very far. He still begs me, saying that he didn't live far away, and that he had to go home, so he could kill this guy. My friend then caught on to my fear, and looked scared as well. I again told the man that I couldn't, stating that this was my mom's car, and she would worry if I didn't get it home to her soon. He walked off rambling, and talking about how I am a bitch, and people like me are the reason that he goes to prison. I jumped into my car and turned the key. Rob then exclaimed, because he was still standing behind my car, looking through the back glass, smiling sadistically at us. I then smiled and waved, but he still wouldn't move. Thank God I see the security guard approach the back of my vehicle and ask the man if he had a problem. He said no and quickly walked off. We turned and began to leave the lot. He was still staring at us from afar when we left. After we pulled out, I told Rob the whole story. He freaked out just as I did. Then he tells me that the only reason he started talking to them is because he was afraid of the man hurting the old lady. I don't know what I should do, because I go back to therapy again on Wednesday. I'm hoping he won't be there, but do you guys think I should report the guy? I am scared to report him, as if he finds out, he might hurt me. Please drop some advice for me. This is my point in writing this. I will keep everyone updated on the situation, if anything comes of it. Update. So I had therapy today, and I decided to take everyone's advice and tell my therapist what happened last week with the man. My friend also told what he had heard from the conversation. He was there today and tried to offer us some candy, acting as if last week never happened. I didn't accept and waited for everyone to clear out of the office. My friend and I walked up and asked to talk to them in private, so I told them what he had said and done last week. The security guard commented that he had a strange feeling, and that's why he came and got him out of the way, asking him if there was a problem. They said that they wouldn't mention us, and they would have a conversation with him. They understood our hesitation and told us that they didn't want us to feel threatened at therapy. Supposedly, they are supposed to keep me updated, so if anything comes up, I will let you guys know. Hopefully, we don't have any more problems. Thanks.
Number 3.
Neighborhood kids attack me. Then their psycho dad threatens to kill me. Bye. Deserted 15. I love listening to scary stories, and figured it's time to maybe share some of my own creepy encounters. A bit of a warning because this is going to be long. Throughout my life, I have experienced many unusual and often unpleasant situations. For privacy reasons, I don't want to give away too much information about myself, but I will say that I am a 20-year-old girl now living in Ireland, where I have lived over 5 years. I grew up in a small Eastern European country of which about 40% are Russian, and are of Russian descent. Even though almost everyone in my country spoke fluent Russian, and much of the population had Russian relatives, ethnic tensions in the country were high. It wasn't uncommon for you to receive a lower salary or worse treatment in shops and other public places if the place was run by natives. It is because of this, I believe I was singled out as a target in this particular story. That and my feeble appearance, as I have always been quite short and skinny. My neighborhood, like any other, consisted of many blocks of Soviet apartments, remnants of the USSR, rotting away, but nevertheless housing hundreds of people. It was a good enough neighborhood, all things considered, and I would not have called my family particularly poor. However, the building we lived in was rather bleak. The hallway was always dark, stank of piss or sometimes other bodily excretions. The building was quite tall and had an old creaky elevator which smelled no better than the hallway itself. It often got stuck or broke down. This, however, was still more favorable than climbing the even darker set of stairs, which often had homeless people sleeping on them, or groups of teenagers gathering to do drugs. The layout of the place is unimportant. However, I believe this description will set the scene. After a year or two of living in this building, with little occurrences aside from stumbling upon the occasional stoner with a knife trying to rob me for drug money, or a drunk passed out in front of my apartment, I started to notice two native kids hanging around the neighborhood, a girl and a boy. At first, they never spoke to me, and I paid little mind to them. However, I would often notice them staring at me as I passed by, or from a distance as I played with the other neighborhood kids. The kids were weird to say the least. They spoke a limited amount of Russian and isolated themselves from everyone else, just watching me. Despite them being very similar looking, nobody knew if they were related, or just two weirdos living in my building who found each other, but I always remember assuming that they were brother and sister. After a while of the not so casual staring, they began to harass me on my walk home, tease me, push me, and generally attempted to get on my nerves with the little Russian insults they knew. I had rather thick skin, so this didn't bother me too much. I would either completely ignore them or fight them back with what I thought were rather witty comments, but these kids were relentless. I began to wonder why they decided to randomly pick on me, as I have never said a word to them before and have never really paid them any significant amount of attention, but decided to settle for the "they're just a bit weird" explanation. Nevertheless, this is all just teasing, right? Kids just being kids. One day, on my walk home, the strange duo were on my heels as usual. The boy making some crude comments about my nationality and how I should go back home to Russia, as well as some other unrelated insults, while the girl snorted and laughed her ass off. I did my best to ignore their behavior, not feeling in the mood to dignify them with a clever comeback this time. However, it became increasingly difficult as in frustration, the two suddenly became more aggressive than usual. All the other times this went on, they would just give up and leave me alone after a while walking in the other direction. But this time, to my surprise, they followed me into my building and into the poorly lit, stinky hallway. Still ignoring them, I pressed the button for the elevator when I felt the boy roughly grab me from behind. I was in shock. The girl joined him, bending my arm in an incredibly uncomfortable position behind my back. "What the hell are you doing?" I screamed at them as they began attempting to drag me into the almost black staircase, telling me to shut the fuck up. I struggled, of course, not understanding what had gotten into these two. I mean, I knew they were weird, but this was something else. They didn't feel like childhood bullies or kids being kids. I believe those two had something sinister on their minds. As I struggled against their grip, trying to break my way free and towards the elevator, then now right onto the ground floor, a middle-aged woman walked into the hallway, a look of confusion at the sight before her on her face. She asked, "Is anyone going up?" Desperately, I breathed, "I am, please," reaching for the elevator, only to hear the guy snarl, "You're not going anywhere." To my surprise, despite the pure desperation in my voice and the fact that I was fighting two seemingly older kids, due to my size, trying to drag me away, the woman didn't offer me any help, didn't give out to the two kids, didn't even ask what the heck was going on. She just shrugged her shoulders and walked into the elevator. What was going through her head still makes me curious, but I'm assuming this is probably due to assuming that this was nothing serious because our age, or maybe her not wanting to get involved any more than she already had, in order to avoid trouble. After all, our neighborhood wasn't the safest, and it's best to just stay out of trouble if you can. At this point, I became surged with adrenaline, partly from my desire to get into that elevator and get away from these two, and partly from anger at her refusal to help me. It is amazing what the human body can do when faced with a potentially dangerous situation. Using all my strength, I whipped around and slammed the boy harshly into the wall behind me, immediately making both the boy and the girl let go of me. I could tell that the two of them were as shocked as I was at what I had just done. As I said, I was a small girl, but it felt as though someone else had possessed me at that moment, as if I wasn't in control of my actions. All I knew is that I had to get away. As soon as I was let go, I ran to the elevator and managed to make it inside before the door closed. The last thing I remember seeing before the door slammed shut and we took off was a girl's shocked expression as she stared at me, surprised at what I was capable of. The lady in the elevator didn't say a word to me. I wish I could say it ended there. A few days later, I was confident in my ability to defend myself against those two, and was pretty sure they would not attempt to attack me again, or even go near me. My relief, however, was short-lived. A friend of mine knocked on my door at the usual time I would go out on a free day, asking to hang out. I of course excitedly agreed, and as soon as I was ready, we headed out and to the elevator. As previously mentioned, the elevator itself was not at all sturdy and easily broke down, but that's not the only thing that made it extremely unsafe. If you were a child and were taking the elevator alone, especially in a building as tall as ours, where there were many floors, you never really knew what the person that got on with you turned out to be, and what they could do to you, especially if the elevator suddenly got stuck. This wasn't something that happened so often, of course, that it prevented us from using it and taking the dreaded stairs. We got on without a worry in the world, and pressed the button for the ground floor, and began chatting about nothing in particular. About 4 floors down, the elevator stopped, letting on a burly middle-aged man. Just the sight of him was intimidating. He had a sunken face, long, black greasy hair, a curly beard, sweat stains under his arms, and his belly was so big that it took up most of the room in the tiny elevator, pushing my friend and I into a corner. We felt silent. At first, he said nothing, just stared at the two of us as the elevator's doors closed. I could tell that much like myself, my friend had an uneasy feeling about him and what his intentions with us were. Then, in a deep, hoarse voice, he slowly and calmly says,
"You think you're so tough, don't you?"
It was more of a statement than a question, and I could tell it was directed at me. Suddenly, he pressed the elevator stop button, screeching it to a halt, reached out, and grabbed me by my fringe. He pinned me against the wall of the elevator, still holding onto my fringe, and began to pull up. I could feel some strands of my hair ripping out of my skull as I was being lifted slightly. However, not enough for my feet to lose contact with the ground. I squealed in pain, as my friend watched in shock, cowering further into the corner, unable to do anything.
"I can be tough too,"
he sneered in a slightly sarcastic tone. I began to try to make him let go of my hair, but to no avail. The more I moved, the more of my fringe ripped out, and the more painful it became, so I just stopped struggling and attempted to stand on my tippy toes as much as I could to release the tension he put on my hair.
"You think it's so funny to hurt my son?"
For a second, I had no idea what he was on about, but then I realized the boy I had slammed against the wall in an attempt to get away must have told his parents what happened, most likely neglecting to include the fact that he attacked me first. Or maybe he did, and his father just didn't give a shit. He didn't seem like a very reasonable man after all.
"I know what floor you live on. If you ever touch my son again, I will put a knife through your throat in this fucking elevator. Do you understand me?"
He hissed at me. Before I could respond, the elevator began to move again. Someone must have called it on another floor. He narrowed his eyes at me and let go of my hair, standing back and acting as if nothing happened. As we stopped, another person got on a few floors down. The rest of the ride down was spent in silence. I don't know what was scarier, the fact that this clearly insane man was threatening my life, or the fact that his equally loopy son stalked me without my knowledge to find out what floor I lived on, and what my routine was so he could get his psycho dad to threaten me. And for what? My friend and I try not to speak about it again, but whenever I see those two kids again, they just keep their distance, as they have before, grinning at me. Hey guys, Psychotic Maniac here. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Boy, that dad has some serious issues if he thinks threatening little kids is okay. A lot has happened in these past few weeks. I got into a car accident, some asshole tried to run me over while I was riding my longboard, and my sister got a cute ass puppy. I am fine by the way, and the dog is a Chihuahua mix for those who are interested. Anyways, I wanted to do a call for action. Many of you guys may know about the whole YouTube ad boycott, and how it's affecting the horror side of YouTube. If you guys didn't know, basically a bunch of companies pulled their ads from YouTube because their ads were being shown on non-family friendly videos. Therefore, YouTube lost a good amount of money. In return, us content creators, especially us horror YouTubers, took a big hit on our revenue. A lot of big narrating channels such as Creepypasta, Corpse Husband, Horror Studio 1 and many others took a bigger hit in comparison to the smaller channels, aka myself and many others. That's why I want to ask you guys to do your part in helping your favorite content creators, be it horror narrators or whatever. Share their videos, watch their videos, and if you can, support by donating to their Patreon accounts. In the words of the great Rob Dyke, let's keep YouTube creepy. I want to give a big shout out to Sean Games-A-Lot for his creepy finish the sentence response. His response was, I looked back up to the mirror to find me, only it wasn't me. I didn't have a scar covering my face. Petrified, I jerked ever so slightly and felt a cold metallic knife course my already bruised neck. Strangely, that didn't scare me. Having no reflection did. This video's finish the sentence is, the loud bump startled me, and I went to see what it was. What I found. Now, go and finish that sentence. Thanks for watching. Be safe, and remember, everyone is a tad bit insane.